welcome you this morning to this radical inclusive community of faith, which means that you're welcome no matter what you believe or what you don't believe, no matter who you are or where you come from, what you look like, your abilities, your disabilities, your joys, your sorrows, whether you're male or female or count yourself as other, whoever you love, there's a place for you here. And I'd especially like to welcome those of you who are here for the very first time today, because it's a new place to come into, and that can be scary. So I hope that we can help you to feel welcome. I hope we can help you to feel at home here. For those of you who are new, you're going to find out very quick. I hope you didn't expect that you were walking into a traditional Christian church, because you're going to get a very different kind of Easter here. We are inspired by stories from many different cultures and religions and traditions, but we don't teach or hold to any particular one. So you'll hear about ideas and wishes and feelings inspired by the story of Easter, but not with a literal belief in Easter. So I hope that you're pleased and not disappointed, and I hope that this Easter morning meets your needs. So I also hope that the next hour does something for your heart, does something for your mind, and helps you in your own journey of growth toward wholeness. And whoever you are not alone. You are welcome here. So I'd like to invite now the children to come forward for the time for all ages.
Can we go forward?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. In the forest, most of the animals in the forest were ground dwellers, like rabbit, like fox, like sheep. Not that common in the forest, but there were some. And the ground dwellers, they were all quite normal people. They went around their everyday lives and everything was fine. And then the owls came along. And because the owls could fly, they thought they were better than the ground dwellers. So they decided they had to civilize the ground dwellers. Because if they couldn't fly, then, well, they weren't really worth much, were they? So they made the ground dwellers do all the work that they didn't really want to do. They made them toil the fields, and they took all of their food, they made them climb the trees and get the nuts, and they made them find the mice so they could eat, and it was just really, really quite sad. But Bunny thought that wasn't quite right. So Bunny said, "This isn't right." And the owl said that Bunny was mad. It was all wrong, don't be ridiculous. And owls are much better than ground dwellers. But Bunny spoke to some of the other ground dwellers and thought that he was right, that just because they could fly, that's something intrinsic in them, doesn't mean that they're better. So Bunny went and he broke the rules. He didn't give all of his carrots. Sorry. He didn't give all of his carrots to the owls. He kept some for himself. And he climbed the trees where the owls were because he deserved to be in the same places. And the owls were really, really annoyed at this, because sometimes he brought other people. And one unruly floor dweller you could kind of deal with, but when they inspired others, then, well, he had to be put down. So they put Bunny in jail. And Bunny became a very famous bunny and inspired lots of other people. Do you know who we're talking about? Bunny called Nelson. Inspired lots of other bunnies and ground dwellers to rise up against the owls. And because there were more ground dwellers, they beat the owls. And they didn't make the owls leave, because the owls were settled there, but they did make them become more fair and vote for the person who could rule the forest. And because Bunny had been so inspiring and willing to sacrifice himself, go to jail, even maybe be killed by the owls, then he became the new president. And it was a much more equal country, but still, he sacrificed a great deal. So sometimes, you have to think what is important enough for you to sacrifice for.
Lead the way.
Yeah, I'm going to watch that.
You go that way. Follow Sarah hard. You're going to walk.
It's been a difficult week, and I'd like for us to take a little time in silence as we remember some of the things that happened this week. In a terrorist attack in Brussels, 31 people were killed and many more injured. In a terrorist attack in Iraq, 32 people were killed and many more injured. And if this has been an average sort of week, about 1,000 Syrian people in Syria have been killed, including about 200 to 250 innocent civilians. And worldwide, about 9,000 people have been killed just this week. So let's take a time of silence, for meditation, for reflection, for prayer, whatever feels right to you, to remember the lives that have been lost this week. May this world become more peaceful, more fair, more loving, and may we do what we can do to help to achieve that great end.
This is from The Pilgrimage to Nonviolence by Martin Luther King Jr. We speak of love, which is expressed in the Greek word agape. Agape is not a weak, passive love, it is love in action. Agape is love seeking to preserve and create community. It is insistence on community, even when one seeks to break it. Agape is a willingness to sacrifice in the interest of mutuality. Agape is a willingness to go to any length to restore community. It doesn't stop at the first mile, but goes the second mile to restore community.
Sunrise by Mary Oliver. You can die for it, an idea, or the world. People have done so brilliantly, letting their small bodies be bound to the stake, creating an unforgettable fury of light. But this morning, climbing the familiar hills in the familiar fabric of dawn, I thought of China and India and Europe, and I thought how the sun blazes for everyone just so joyfully as it rises under the lashes of my own eyes. And I thought, I am so many. What is my name? What is the name of the deep breath I would take over and over for all of us? Call it whatever you want. It is happiness. It is another one of the ways to enter fire.
I'd like to invite you to rise again as you're able, and this time grabbing your teal book. We're going to sing The Fire of Commitment, number 1020. Easter is a story of hope. It is a story of the possibility that terrible disappointment and enormous suffering can be followed by liberation and by joy and by promise. Jesus was arrested, tortured, and then put to death in the most horrible way the Romans had at their disposal, crucifixion. And 2 days later, Jesus' tomb was found empty. He had risen from the dead. The power of the Romans had been defeated. Death itself had been defeated. Easter is the ultimate story of sacrifice, the story of giving everything for the benefit of humankind. And sacrifice is not something we talk about very much in our culture. Sacrifice is not something we talk about very much, if at all, in this congregation. It's something that's perhaps seen as something from the past, something that our modern advanced civilization has somehow made unnecessary, except for parents, of course, who have to sacrifice and not get any sleep, like John and Laura and many of you. So a pig and a chicken were walking down the road one day, and the chicken said, "Hey, pig, I was thinking," they were American pigs, "I was thinking we should open a restaurant." And pig replied, maybe, what would we call it? Chicken thinks for a moment, "How about ham and eggs?" And the pig thinks for a moment and says, "Thanks, but no. I'd be committed, you'd only be involved." The pig had decided not to be a martyr for the restaurant, not to make the ultimate sacrifice. The drawing on the cover of your order service, there are two pictures. One's a drawing and one's a photograph. And the drawing is Michael Servetus. And Michael Servetus made the big mistake during the Reformation of denying the Christian doctrine of the Trinity. And then, to make matters worse, he refused to recant his Unitarian words, as opposed to Trinitarian beliefs, when he had the chance. And so he was burned at the stake on the orders of John Calvin. And the photograph is James Reeb, who was an American Unitarian Universalist minister. And in 1965, he put his life on the line by participating in the voting rights movement for African Americans in Selma, Alabama. And Reeb was beaten to death by white segregationists. Reeb and Servetus were both peaceful people. Their aims were for greater freedom, and their means were nonviolent. And they gave their lives for their beliefs and their aims. And there have been many other nonviolent heroes who have sacrificed personally for lofty ideals. We admire them, although we certainly don't want to be like them. We think of Martin Luther King, of Gandhi, of Archbishop Oscar Romero, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. These are just a few. And many more have risked their lives, but were lucky enough not to lose them. Today, as always, there are those who sacrifice their lives, who we number among our enemies. We were reminded just this week by the events in Belgium and in Iraq that there are those who would be ready to give their lives in a pursuit of a cause using violent and murderous means. They strap explosives to themselves, carry them into places filled with innocents, and blow themselves up, taking as many victims with them as they can. To them, as well as to those we admire, the importance of the goal or value is so great that life itself is not too great a price to pay. And as has often been said, the difference between a freedom fighter and a terrorist can be in the eye of the beholder. The fact that someone is willing to sacrifice is not, of course, any indication of the benefit that their cause might bring. There have always been people ready to make the ultimate sacrifice for a cause. Sometimes their sacrifice has changed the world, and sometimes it went unnoticed. There are no guarantees that a sacrifice will make a difference, which makes considering sacrifice all the more difficult. Martin Luther King, in the reading we heard this morning, tells us that the kind of love that brings about justice entails a willingness to sacrifice for one another. Indeed, it's hard to imagine any kind of a definition of love that doesn't include a willingness to give up something for another's well-being. And this is important. In relationship, in community, and civil society, we are often given the sense that caring should always feel good and be mutually beneficial even in the moment. Win-win from the start. And the truth is that anything worth pursuing requires giving something up, requires sacrifice. And this is true whether we're talking about friendship, teamwork, marriage, being together in community, or being a citizen of this world. Sacrifice is a notion that we need to bring back. It will take sacrifice to make peace. It will take sacrifice to bring about justice. It will take sacrifice to prevent even more catastrophic climate change than is currently locked in. And I am not asking you to put your life on the line for your beliefs or for anyone else, and certainly I don't set such an example. I do not take the role of the pig in creating the restaurant of justice, or just a chicken, in all senses of that word. And I do my part with chicken-like participation, but not porcine commitment. And I hope that none of us will ever need to give our lives for a cause. I hope it never comes to that, but sacrifice we do. Every day we make sacrifices, some small, some large. We call them choices or trade-offs. And we may not even notice as we're making them. Today, you sacrificed doing something else to be here. Today, we sacrificed trees to make the paper for our handouts. Today, we sacrificed money to heat this building, to buy coffee and tea and cake, and to pay me, and to pay our musicians. In fact, every time any of us spend money, we're making a sacrifice. We are sacrificing one thing for another. If you bought a coffee this morning, and I know some of you did, you sacrificed a few pounds that could have been spent otherwise. So maybe you sacrificed part of the cost of some clothing or food or entertainment that you could have had at some other point in time. Or maybe you sacrificed a bit of savings that you might want someday. Everything we do involves choices and sacrifices. There are many people in this congregation who are wrestling with how they will spend their futures, and especially how they will spend their working lives. They have hard choices to make, as we all do. They can sacrifice certainty for the chance of something more exciting. They can sacrifice more money for more satisfaction. They can sacrifice maybe more time for more money, or the reverse. Almost anything we do or don't do involves a trade-off. It involves a sacrifice of some kind, and this is especially important in our culture, where it seems increasingly to reject the notion of sacrifice. And at least according to the advertisements, we don't have to sacrifice comfort or beauty or luxury or money or flavor or much of anything else. We can have it all if we buy the right products, invest in the right place, read the right book, or get the right help in creating that perfect life. But every one of these non-sacrifices is a sacrifice. And I personally don't want to sacrifice the fun of having new gadgets. My Android watch, for example. But to get them, I've sacrificed the time it takes to learn them, the calm I could have had instead of worrying about what the heck is wrong with it when it doesn't work. And I've sacrificed the money that I could have used in a million other ways, not least of which, of course, is to help people. Life is full of choices and sacrifices. Today, this Easter Sunday, as Christians remember a man who sacrificed himself for his ideals and for his people, is also the last day of our 3-month focus on social justice. And I have been wrestling with myself for what I would sacrifice for justice. And we live in very uncertain times today. We are especially concerned with the twin issues that both arise from conflict in the Middle East: terrorism that's been enabled by unrest and the vast number of people fleeing for safety. And these twin issues cause complex responses in the West. There's compassion for the refugees, and there are fears that the refugees will change Western culture and could provide a cover for terrorists to enter. And then as a result of those fears, immigration is strengthening right-wing groups throughout Europe. There are trade-offs and sacrifices to make. Perhaps your values tell you to accept all refugees, and that strengthening right-wing groups could be disastrous. You may need to sacrifice one value for another, at least temporarily. And in a week where terrorism has struck again, there's the fear of the terrorists and a resulting willingness to allow government to have more power and to take more extreme measures. And then there is also the fear that such measures will lead to oppression and limit freedoms for everyone. There's also the very realistic worry that such responses will make the problem worse. After all, the best way to confirm the terrorists' claims that the West hates Muslims is by treating Muslims according to harsher rules than everyone else. So it's trade-off time again. What will we sacrifice? If the trade-off is safety versus freedom, if the trade-off is short-term benefit versus long-term risk, what will we sacrifice? When we consider questions of justice, questions of sacrifice are always close at hand. I have watched with disgust and with worry as Donald Trump has become the presumptive Republican candidate for the President of the United States. Trump has encouraged violence in his rallies. He has spoken of barring and expelling Muslims from the United States. And his remaining Republican opponent, Ted Cruz, has gone even further, although he does it more politely. He has talked about patrolling and securing Muslim neighborhoods. And those words are frighteningly close to those used by the Nazis about their eventual victims as they gained power. And I think of Martin Niemöller's powerful poem about those times. He wrote, "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." What am I willing to sacrifice to protect a Muslim in the United States or here? What am I willing to sacrifice to help refugees, to help the poor, to help victims of racism and anyone else who is persecuted? And so I leave you with this question that all of us must answer. What are you willing to sacrifice for a more just, more peaceful world? The questions are asked in every age and every place, and the answers matter more than we will ever know. I'd like to invite you into a time of silence for meditation or reflection or prayer, and we'll end that silence with a short musical interlude. particularly because we didn't actually communicate about the musical interlude. So I don't think John or Ezra had any idea we were going to do that until we did it. And that was so beautiful. So we're going to take a collection now, and the way it works at Unity is collections are for charity. So everything that's collected is going to be given away, and this month we're collecting for the Hackney Cypriots Association and their winter appeal that goes to support refugees in camps in Greece. So I'd welcome you to give generously. Today is the last day that we're collecting for the Hackney Cypriots Association and their very good work. At the same time, there's going to be 2 clipboards circulating. One, so you can sign up for the email list if you want to know what's going on here at New Unity, and the other is if you'd like to sign up to help on a Sunday morning with welcoming people in, with preparing tea and coffee, or providing flowers. And if you do sign up, if it's your first time, put your email address and a complete set of digital instructions will be sent to you, so you'll have no question about what to do. like to say goodbye to our friends in the live streaming audience. We end our broadcast at this point.